Words rarely mean only what they say. Beneath every sentence lies intention, emotion, hesitation, and sometimes concealment. Human language is layered. On the surface, it carries literal meaning. Beneath that surface, it carries tone, emphasis, rhythm, timing, and strategic omission. To understand communication fully is not merely to hear vocabulary, but to interpret psychological movement behind it. Many misunderstandings occur not because people lack intelligence, but because they focus only on explicit content. They analyze what was said without asking why it was said that way, at that moment, in that tone. Language functions both as a bridge and as a boundary. It connects individuals who share symbols and cultural references. Yet it can also divide groups through subtle differences in phrasing, accent, or implied values. The same sentence delivered with warmth communicates inclusion. Delivered with dryness, it communicates distance. Delivered with slight irony, it communicates superiority. These shifts are rarely written into the words themselves. They exist in modulation. When someone says, "That's interesting," it may signal genuine curiosity. It may also signal skepticism. It may signal polite dismissal. The psychological meaning emerges not from the dictionary definition, but from vocal texture and facial microexpression. High emotional intelligence requires sensitivity to these invisible layers. People often reveal more through what they avoid saying than through what they express openly. A pause before answering a simple question may indicate internal conflict. A sudden change of subject may signal discomfort. Repetition of certain phrases may reveal insecurity or the need for validation. Even exaggerated enthusiasm can function as compensation for doubt. Listening deeply means noticing patterns rather than isolated sentences. For example, when an employee repeatedly emphasizes how busy they are without being asked, it may signal fear of appearing unproductive. When a friend constantly frames decisions as no big deal, it may indicate suppressed anxiety. The spoken narrative and the emotional narrative do not always align. Skilled listeners attend to both simultaneously. Social groups are shaped by language patterns. Vocabulary, humor style, and conversational pacing function as markers of belonging. Individuals unconsciously adapt their speech to match the group they wish to integrate into. This phenomenon, known as linguistic accommodation, reflects our psychological desire for acceptance. However, language can also create separation. Jargon, technical phrasing, or insider references may intentionally exclude outsiders. In this sense, language operates as both communication and social architecture. It organizes power structures subtly. Those who control framing control perception. If a conflict is described as a misunderstanding, responsibility feels shared. If it is described as negligence, responsibility feels directed. Word choice shapes emotional reaction before logic intervenes. The framing effect demonstrates how psychological responses are influenced by linguistic structure. When a proposal is described as having a 90% success rate, it evokes confidence. When described as having a 10% failure rate, it evokes caution, even though both statements contain identical statistical content. Language does not merely transmit information, it constructs psychological reality. To hear what lies beyond the words requires disciplined attention. First, one must slow down interpretation. Immediate reactions often distort meaning because they are filtered through personal bias. When someone makes a critical remark, the listener may instantly interpret it as hostility, even if it was intended as guidance. By observing tone, pacing, and context, interpretation becomes more accurate. Context transforms meaning. A short response in a tense meeting may signal resistance. The same short response in a relaxed conversation may signal efficiency. Tone functions as emotional punctuation. Rising intonation may imply uncertainty. A lowered tone may signal seriousness. Rapid speech may reflect anxiety or excitement. Slower, deliberate speech may indicate confidence or strategic caution. Silence itself communicates powerfully. Some individuals use silence to gather control. Others use it to avoid confrontation. In negotiation settings, silence often creates pressure. The person who speaks first may reveal more than intended. In interpersonal relationships, silence can either offer space for reflection or create emotional distance. Interpreting silence depends on accompanying nonverbal cues. Facial tension, eye direction, and posture complete the psychological message. Another key dimension is subtext. Subtext refers to the underlying message that is implied but not explicitly stated. For example, when someone says, "Do whatever you think is best," it may genuinely grant autonomy. It may also conceal disappointment. When a leader says, "We'll revisit this later," it may signal postponement or quiet rejection. Recognizing subtext requires awareness of relational dynamics and prior patterns. No sentence exists in isolation. It is embedded in history. Cultural background further complicates interpretation. In some cultures, direct criticism is valued for clarity. In others, indirect suggestion is preferred to preserve harmony. Misreading these conventions leads to unnecessary conflict. Emotional nuance is often culturally encoded. High-level communicators study these nuances carefully rather than assuming universality. Ultimately, listening beyond words is not about suspicion, but about comprehension. It allows one to respond appropriately rather than react impulsively. It prevents escalation. It reveals hidden needs. It strengthens leadership and deepens trust. When individuals feel truly understood, not only at the level of words, but at the level of intention, they become more open and cooperative. Mastering this skill transforms conversation from surface exchange into psychological insight. In a world saturated with speech, the rare ability is not speaking more, but hearing more. The deeper the listening, the clearer the human landscape becomes.